Night. So welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for the Outdoor 2023 Town Hall for the U10 and U11 players with CMSA. We're delighted you could join us tonight. Some housekeeping pieces to begin with. I see that someone's already activated the closed captioning, so that's available for everyone, or should be available for everyone. Hopefully it picks up my speech and is nice and clear. We also have a Q&A that you can access. So if you have any comments, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, please input them in the Q&A area. We've got Kim, Rachel, and myself who will be in the chat there trying to answer your questions as they pop up. But please, there's a Q&A portion at the end as well that you can always ask your questions then. We're really happy that so many people have joined us tonight. Sometimes when you put these on, it's a bit of a scattered attendance. So thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you get some value out of tonight, and we hope that there's some clarity and understanding as well. And this serves to prepare you for the upcoming season. So without further ado, we would like to do a land acknowledgement. In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, the Kainai, the Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, and the Stoney Nakoda Nations, the Métis Nation Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. I'll start us off with a little bit of a video here, and this is our 2022 year in review and recap. This is something really that we like to celebrate, because at the end of the day, we're more as CMSA, we're more than just a league operator. We are a governing body. We are a district within Alberta. We want to be innovators and leaders within the soccer space within Canada, and we're at first and foremost, we are a community, and we want to make sure that we develop community, that we build culture, that we help collaborate with our members and help our members collaborate as well. And so let this video kind of serve as a reminder of the amazing work that every one of us has been a part of within the last 12 months. And as we look to build on 2022 into 2023, and how amazing this year is going to be for Calgary soccer as well. Excellent. So as I say, we really want to be developing culture and community within Calgary here, and we can't do it without you. We can't do it without your children. We can't do it without the referees, the administrators, the coaches, or our clubs. So together we can move the game forward. Before I introduce myself, I want to make sure that I acknowledge two fantastic people that are on the line tonight as well, helping us out. It's Kim Kerr and Rachel Hugh, who are our league coordinators at CMSA. These two women put in a countless amount of hours and truly are the heartbeat of CMSA in terms of getting our scheduling done, answering a ton of questions, organizing referees, and countless other work tasks that they do in the backgrounds to help soccer continue to function within Calgary here and within CMSA. So without them, I would be struggling and we would be struggling. So I want to make sure that I acknowledge them and thank them for the work that they do and also the time that they're giving up tonight to help answer questions and to really hear what our membership have to say as well. They will at times pop in potentially and add some pieces, but for right now, I think they're just going to work in the backgrounds and continue to smash out schedules. My name is Jordan Stewart, and I'm honored and lucky to be with you tonight. I feel really fortunate with the role that I do have and the leadership responsibility that I have within the Calgary region in terms of trying to push this game forward. I've worked with players anywhere from U8. It probably should actually say U4 or U6 because I think there's been a couple of instances there, all the way through to university and senior age players. Previous to CMSA, I was the ASA Regional Coach South and the Alberta Recs Director, where my key portfolios of work were around player development, district outreach, and coach education, as well as a few other things in terms of youth national team integrations and some other projects that were an honor to be a privilege to be a part of. Some experience that I've had, I've worked in everything from the grassroots soccer environments straight through to youth national team development systems in universities and governing bodies. I've got a fairly diverse experience and a kind of unique cross-section on what the game is like in Alberta here, and then also through my network, what the game is like across the country and how we can work together with other areas to push things forward. And so when I started with CMSA, they asked me to initially write a technical plan in terms of how we are going to improve the game, how are we going to increase standards, and what are we going to focus on for the next 3 years. You can see that this technical plan is coming to the end of its lifespan in 2023. And I wanted to give a quick recap kind of as to where we are and hopefully some hints as to where we'll be going with the next technical plan. You'll see that some ongoing projects are around consulting with clubs, around their delivery and training structures to improve retention and development of players. It's around evaluating how our indoor game is played. And it's around collaborating with our membership like this in town halls prior to all seasons to answer the questions and to hear things straight from our members and our parents and our players and our referees and our coaches. The second sphere was around developing the game. So moving out of the govern section to the develop section. And some of these pieces have been delayed for a multitude of excuses and reasons. Probably that we tried to bite off more than we could chew at some point. But we want to make sure that we're including our parents within what happens. And so a parent development series as well as a parent advisory council is to be developed and to be formed. Some other pieces around clubs achieving club licensing will happen as of May 1st. As long as they get their work done, we get our work done, we should be in a really good place. And I'll speak more to some of those pieces and what kind of impacts that has in the local game. The last sphere was into the grow sphere. So trying to grow the game and to reignite things coming out of a pandemic. And so we wanted to reduce the travel time, the average travel time in terms of the matches that we put on. We wanted to make sure that we address the issues around women and girls in soccer, the dropout rates, the retention rates, and also provide pathways for female referees, players, coaches, and administrators. And also to explore other ways that we can engage with our membership and grow our membership in terms of an esports league and some other unique ways to try and expand what the game can actually bring the players. Because at the end of the day, the player is the most important person in all of this discussion. And the player is really what we focus on in terms of our decision-making and how things are going to impact players. I'd be remiss if I didn't speak to the Canada Soccer Player Pathway so everyone on this call has an awareness of kind of how this works and what this image really represents. And what you'll see is you'll see 3 sections at the bottom here that flow up into other sections. And you'll see that they don't flow up straight to 4 to 5 to 6, but rather into the different stages. And those different stages are around active start, fundamentals, learn to train, which is really a lot of the entry point to soccer for most people. And then flowing up into standards-based and developmental leagues and into competitive and community leagues in terms of a Soccer for Life stream. For an awareness of where things operate and where things fall in the province here, I've tried to create this handy graphic. CMSA operates really at 1, 2, 3, and 7. So we don't operate anything at stage 4, 4.5, 5, 6, or the senior levels of stages 5 or 7. You'll see here that the community and competitive streams are really what we're talking about tonight, as well as our learn to train stage in this chat tonight. If you want other information around stages 1 or 2, you can pick up some LTPD information or watch some of our other webinars and screencasts that we've produced. You'll also see that things like AYSL exist in stage 4, and those flow through into Rex programs and Whitecaps boys programs, which flow into youth national teams and eventually into professional environments and senior national teams. You may not recognize this one logo up in stage 5. This is a newly launched league within Alberta. This is called League One Alberta, and it's a pro-am or semi-pro league for largely university-age players to showcase themselves and to also start to build out the pathway within senior football within this country and within this province. If you've been watching any of the Canadian Championship, you would have seen recently the TSS Rovers, who were the League One BC champions, defeat Valor FC. So the first time a semi-pro team has beat a fully professional team in Canadian soccer history. So we're starting to make history within this country. We're starting to make massive steps forward, and we're delighted to try and be a part of this pathway and part of these discussions. You'll also see over here in stages 7, Calgary United Soccer Association, which is our men's and co-ed league, and Calgary Women's Soccer Association. They run both competitive and community leagues, with our top adult league next to League One being the Alberta Major Soccer League. Excellent. We want to make sure that we discuss some of the documents that we spend a lot of time creating and that we give our clubs as resources, but also that there's an awareness for our coaches and parents and players as well. We create a program handbook before every single season, which essentially outlines what the CMSA leagues are going to look like for the upcoming season so that our clubs can base their registration packages off of this information. What I would do is I would ask you to reflect on a comparison between the CMSA program handbook and your own club's registration package and ask, is it accurate? Is it aligned? Because our goal and our messaging to our clubs is that we would love for consistency and clarity so that people understand what they're registering for and they have a general knowledge when they're making these decisions. So a resource for you to be aware of and for you to utilize in the future. We've also created SQS club handbooks, which have gone over really, really well with our clubs, with our own governing bodies, and with numerous other associations around the country who are trying to essentially steal this material and repurpose it. With the SQS deadline coming up of May 1st of 2023, a key component of this is trying to raise the sea so that all the ships or clubs can raise their standards as well. And really it's about taking some risk management away from the game and some sort of consumer clarity and consumer, what's the word I'm looking for? Some consumer knowledge around where is quality soccer, because SQS stands for Standards for Quality Soccer. I'll get into this a little bit more now. So the SQS standards, in terms of our coaching standards, there's two categories. One is a modified safe sport roster and one is a full safe sport roster. You'll see that our modified safe sport roster is in place from our U3 to U11 leagues. And our full safe sport roster requirements are in from U12 and older. What we've done is we've worked in a collaborative manner with our clubs and with our club leaders to sign on to an agreement, and they will be signing on to this shortly, to raise their standards incrementally through all of their programming over the next 3 years, because we feel as though we've adopted a lower coaching standard than where it should be initially. We've been advocating for over 2 years with our clubs that they need to be communicating with their coaches and making sure that they are increasing their knowledge and completing some of the required education and training to continue to coach within an SQS environment. And when I say an SQS environment, the National Youth Club license holders aren't exempt from that either, and the same standards are applying to them right now. So what does this look like? I see that there's a question in the chat. It says, what power does CMSA have to enforce clubs to align with these policies? It's a great question. So this will hopefully start to answer some of that. What we're going to be doing is monitoring. So things like clubs putting one person that's completed Respect in Sport on all of their rosters is no longer going to be accepted. All coaches and assistant coaches will have a bare minimum standard that they must meet. Otherwise, they won't be eligible, and games will be defaulted. They won't be available to be on rosters, and it is that simple. This isn't necessarily a CMSA directive. This is a nationwide directive from Canada Soccer and from the provinces, which at the end of the day filters down to a district and club level at some point. All coaches will need that required training, as I've mentioned. And the other piece is around club accountability, because they need to be doing what's right, not necessarily what's easy. And their willingness to adhere to basic standards will determine their longevity in soccer. So there's an audit process within all of the club licensing, whether it's National Youth Club License, an SQS, MA1 or MA2, which haven't been built out yet. But there's an audit process, which essentially allows a 360-degree audit to take place and for licenses to be removed and revoked. So in terms of an enforcement piece, governing bodies now have a more significant say in what happens, and also a useful method to audit and to evaluate and ensure that there's certain standards being upheld within our clubs. I'm going to pause there for 1 second and have a quick drink, as I've been talking for a few minutes. What you're seeing on your screen now is a chart that's available in many documents and available on Calgary Minor Soccer's website in terms of the minimum coaching standards that we expect of our coaches. And when I say minimum standards, this is the bare minimum. When we talk about our U7s to U9s, it's a police clearance with vulnerable sector search. It is Respect in Sport, activity leader completed, and then it is a theory component of the fundamentals course. You'll see here a little plus sign beside the practical. That means it's recommended coach training, but not required. You'll see here that anytime you see a check mark, it's required for all team officials in terms of coaches, assistant coaches, and even team managers. And the required education for the coaches and assistant coaches is denoted with a little star here. So for tonight's purposes, you'll see the U10s and U11s is a police clearance, Respect in Sport completed, and then the recommended coach training is making ethical decisions and making headway. These two things are going to prepare you for when U12 comes about. And if you're still coaching then, it'll be a far less burdensome endeavor to be taken on at that U12 level. We know that there's a massive time commitment. There's a financial commitment for some of this as well. And we don't take it lightly when we institute standards like this for our coaches. You'll also see over here that we require them to have completed a Learn to Train or higher license, as long as it's an applicable stream. I can speak more to that if there are specific questions to that, or we can speak offline about that. But the theory component of that Learn to Train is where we're looking, and then a practical portion, which is highly recommended. It should say highly recommended, not just recommended on that one. Again, it's about preparing these coaches and preparing them to have a successful soccer season with some more tools in their tool belt, and really to give our players a better experience at the end of the day. So I'm a new parent. My son is registered for the first time in a club in Calgary. He's a whopping 3 years old, and I'm already asking the questions of what certification or standards do your coaches have? What can I expect from the environment? And what should this look like? Because at the end of the day, we're all paying customers, and there has to be some sort of standards and accountability within these environments. There's a question there that says, how can CMSA help with getting more coaches signed up and set up for success when it's typically a volunteer position? It's a fantastic question. In terms of getting more coaches signed up, typically that is a club responsibility, as they're the ones who are utilizing the coaches. What we're trying to do is we're trying to arm them with strategies to increase their return on investment to their coach education, and also to attract coaches into coaching. We've outlined numerous strategies within our SQS document, which I can send out after if anyone has any sort of specific questions around that, in terms of the strategies to give to those clubs. It's a difficult one for us to be recruiting coaches because the coaches don't actually coach within a club at CMSA, or CMSA club, if you will. They coach within a club at CMSA. So the club is responsible essentially for two key roles. It's coach and player development at the end of the day, and they need to be making sure that they're accomplishing those roles in a timely manner. In terms of setup for success, when it's typically a volunteer position, a lot of these educational courses will set up volunteer coaches for success. And we know that it's a time commitment. We know that it's not easy. I've asked my brother-in-law, who decided to coach his 3-year-old and 4-year-old in Warman, Saskatchewan last year. I asked him just how long it took him in terms of hours to do making ethical decisions, to do respect in sport, and his online theory. That's what they had as a requirement there. He said it took him 17 hours, and that's in the middle of dealing with 2 kids. It's in the middle of cooking dinner and putting them to bed and the rest of life's commitments. But these were the standards that were determined even in a small town like Warman, Saskatchewan. So the bare minimum that we can expect in terms of from our coaches is some of these standards. You'll see here a quick slide in terms of our outdoor 2023 practical coaching courses. I see some names on the call who have been involved in these coaching courses as well. So if they would like to reach out with feedback on how the practical element was, it's always welcome, and we always seek to improve what that looks like. And you'll see that there's lots of room left in most of these courses. And you'll see also some of the courses that could have been massive and we maybe missed the mark. Could have been timing, it could have been a lot of other factors. But there's a great opportunity for coaches to complete a practical element and be more set up for success come the outdoor 2023 season. We've tried to outline what the kind of coaching pathway and coaching roadmap looks like within that SQS document and within the coaching pathway handbook. These modified safe sport roster requirements really seek to outline a choose your own adventure kind of element, where the required is not in the gray box and the recommended is all in the gray box. So you'll see here that as they flow through, they enter electronic police information check, respect in sport activity leader, and then filter through into probably learn to train or potentially soccer for life or fundamentals or active start. I'll glaze over this one because this is the U12 plus slide and move into a piece where we try to explain how your actual schedule is built, because I saw a question in the chat earlier about, can we have play dates before we register our kids for soccer so that we can coordinate a multi-sport experience, so that we can have our kids involved in different activities and make them a more holistic person and player as well. And typically this is how our seasons are structured and how our kind of preparation happens. Our tier 1 declarations, I believe we're on March 28th, where clubs will submit to us any team that they want to be putting in tier 1. And it helps get us, or give us, an understanding of how our leagues are going to shape up and what sort of difficult conversations we might need to have. Then we move into the team entry phase, which is step 2, and we solicit all teams from clubs. So we have no idea of any division size or any tier size or any gender size, really. But we ask our clubs to submit all of their teams before or on team entry day. That day this year was April 3rd. Step 3 is the Club Connect, and this is really one of the most valuable pieces within this entire diagram. The Club Connect is when we bring all of the technical leaders in from the clubs in Calgary. We sit them all down in a room and we go through every single division within CMSA. And we ask them questions like, should this team be here? Or is this an appropriate spot for your team? Are you going to receive meaningful competition based on the rest of the teams in this division, group, or league? They are the ones then that move teams around, that have a discussion, that hold each other accountable, and really work in a collaborative manner to try and find the best home for each one of their teams based on what the other groups and teams look like. We then have a deadline, which this year was the weekend after, where we send back out what they've changed and modified to give them one last look and to say, if we've missed anything, if you've missed anything, now is your time essentially to change or tweak anything. We then look to put all of that information into some preset play dates in terms of when a certain age group and division will be playing. And then based on the format, on the number of teams that have been entered. It sounds like calculus. It sounds like, quantum physics. And I know that I'm not trying to mean it to, but it's a fairly involved process to this point. Then Rachel and Kim work incredibly hard in terms of aligning what we've gotten from the city of Calgary for our field permits, what matches up with those preset play dates, and what matches up with those formats and groups that have been contrived and built by our clubs, essentially. They then start building the schedule, which is an enormous undertaking. Everyone thinks that it's as easy as put it into a computer program, hit generate, and away we go. It's a very time-consuming process. And then they look to move into manipulating. So manipulating things like, is there an equal balance of home and away games, or as equal as we can possibly make? Do we have out of district or out of town teams having an 8 a.m. kickoff? Well, we'd like to avoid that. All sorts of random sort of variables that they're then putting into play, of which I've probably only captured 2 or 3 of the 100 that they think about. And then they look to publish things. Of course, after it's published, there's always some rescheduling that has to be done, and that happens ongoing throughout the season. And then, as it says at the bottom, they do it all over again. So we don't cap any divisions, so we don't really know what the format's going to be, and we don't know how many teams are going to be entered into each division each season, because we want the player and the club to have the option and the opportunity to play at the level that's appropriate to them. You'll see there at the bottom that in the indoor 2022-23 indoor season, we scheduled almost 5,200 games across 60 divisions. And I believe just for the U10s to U12s, there's around 2,200 games total. So if we operate at 99% efficiency and 99% of the games come off well, there's still going to be 22 that are horrendous, which isn't a great number, but it is an idea for everyone on the call and an awareness that this is the kind of scope and scale that we're working with within the system. There's a question here in the chat that says, you say that you don't know team numbers in each division until near the end of the step 6 process. Have you ever done an analysis of how much the numbers change year to year? Is it not possible to forecast based on past years and set some game days in advance? It's a fantastic question, really. So what we've had is coming out of a pandemic. It's been difficult to forecast what the return to soccer has been like. Now we're at a place where we can probably start to make some accurate predictions in terms of what our retention rates and return rates are from age groups moving up to another age group, but then also what our kind of attraction rates are going to be year over year and season over season. From outdoor 2022 till outdoor 2023 right now, without house league numbers put into the equation, we're actually up 5%. And you'll probably think, well, 5% isn't really that much, but 5% on 2,200 games just in 3 age groups is a significant increase in terms of the overall scale and things. With those forecasts, we're not sure what sort of an effect a Women's World Cup is going to have this outdoor. We're not sure what sort of effect potentially hosting a World Cup in 2026 is going to have in terms of the groundswell of people that are involved and want to be playing soccer. We can make some forecasts and try and predict. What we've learned in the past, though, is when we predict things and we publish that, typically we get held accountable to that, which is totally fair. But then when changes need to happen, that's when the pitchforks and torches typically come out, which is no good for parents who maybe are expecting game days to be on a Tuesday night, and then there's 3 extra teams in that division which have changed things dramatically and it gets moved to a Wednesday night. It's a difficult process to try and hammer down that preset game day unless we are capping our divisions and capping our leagues. If we were to say that there's only 8 teams per league and the rest of the kids can't play soccer, then we'd be able to accurately predict year over year exactly what time, exactly what day every single game is going to play on. I'm not sure if Kim or Rachel have anything else to add or want to jump in there. I'm just looking at my phone to see if they're shooting me any messages to jump in there. Kim has sent through a message that says nothing to add, so I must have done at least a mediocre job of that. Suggested in the chat as well in terms of overbook the fields for given nights, which would allow for a few extra teams if and when they happen, then you would not need to change game days. It's a great suggestion. When we book fields through the city of Calgary, and I'll speak first to the city of Calgary, they have a 30-day process to return those fields. So anything that isn't returned within those 30 days, we essentially flush money down the toilet. And at the end of the day, that's your money, that's the club's money, that is our members' money. And so we like to avoid wasting money in an inefficient manner like that. Other centers or other facilities that we use, such as Edge, Rundle College, Genesis Center, etc., have different policies and procedures in terms of returning those as well. In terms of the U10s, 11s that we're speaking with now, all of those games are booked through the clubs and on club community fields. We don't actually hold any of those permits. The club is the one that holds those permits because they use them for training and other club activities as well. So they would actually be the ones who have to hold additional permits for these age groups, and they would be the ones on the hook for some of those costs as well, leading to increased registration costs. It's a fantastic suggestion. It's something that we've considered and tried to play around with as well. But we want to make sure that we're not operating lean, but operating efficiently in terms of how we allocate our resources and the field expenses that we do incur. I'll take a second to chat quickly about the biobanding initiative, which will be present in all of our leagues. Really, this is a player placement initiative where we're putting the biological maturation of the player ahead of the chronological age of the player. It's something that allows for maybe late developing players to play down in age group and play at a level that physically is similar to them. We don't see this as players taking a step backwards. We see this as players having access to the right environment for them. And this is a process that through a few years of us doing this hasn't led to a ton of complaints. There's been a couple for sure, but based on the volume of players that have been biobanded across CMSA leagues, it's not even a process yet that warrants us looking at and trying to refine. What we've noticed is that clubs typically are not putting players on teams in the first, second, or even third positions in the leagues. And typically this is for players in a developmental opportunity or for some sort of other playing experience piece. We ask all of the clubs and teams to be submitting a form to CMSA notifying us which players are biobanded, and then also for them to notify the rest of the clubs within those age groups that there are biobanded players on those teams as a way to create collaboration and accountability within the community. This is always the ugly slide, and this is the one that feels like the teacher is scolding people. So I want to make sure that there's context to this. We want to make sure that, again, we're building community and culture within the game in Calgary, and there's certain conduct expectations. You can call these unwritten rules, or you can call these actual formal codes of conduct. We, at the end of the day, everyone on this call are the ones who set the standard of what's acceptable and not acceptable. And I'm not even talking about how we treat referees or new referees, which in the U10 and U11 age groups, you will have a lot of teal shirt referees, which we'll get into in a moment. But also the way we speak to each other in terms of our parents, the way that our coaches interact, the way that we interact with players. If we don't set a high standard of what's acceptable, really we're just wrestling with pigs. And the only one that's happy when you wrestle a pig is the pig. And we just get covered in mud and you know what. So let's make sure that we have high standards, that we have high expectations of each other, and that we put the game and the community first, and that our kids are the ones at the center of everything that we're trying to do. How are we going to be good role models for them? I said that I would speak to some other initiatives, including our teal shirt piece. I'll quickly talk about our Empower Her initiative, which is our women and girls in soccer piece. We want to make sure that we're attracting young girls to the game, but also then retaining them and giving them a great experience within the game. So the Empower Her initiative has got a couple of different spheres and objectives, but I want to make sure that some of these dates are well publicized and that people understand what we're trying to do. We're trying to encourage female coaches to stay involved in the game and give them great tools so that they do have a pathway in the game. So we hosted a female-only Learn to Train practical coach education session. To be fair, hosted is a term that shouldn't be used. We actually had to postpone it due to some facility issues on that day, but we'll be looking to run that in May and relaunch the registration for that. April 23rd, we hosted a female-only entry-level class. So for referees and young women who want to pursue refereeing, giving them a chance to go through that. June 21st, we'll be hosting a free play day, which will see girls of any age and any club in the city come out and have just a social day to enjoy each other and to enjoy the game. And then lastly, we're going to be working with a partner club on July 20th for a Women's World Cup watch party, where we'll have a 3v3 tournament pre-game. So girls can submit their own nation of choice and compete in their own little mini World Cup just prior to watching some of their heroes compete on the world's biggest stage. We're also trying to make progress in terms of the referee area, in terms of attracting people to refereeing and then also retaining them and progressing them through the refereeing avenues. We've had to launch extra entry-level courses, and not just one, but 3 extra entry-level courses, because there is a ferocious appetite right now for people becoming referees. We will look to train almost 200 referees ahead of this season. And most of those referees, if not all of them, are going to be involved in the U10 to U11 age groups. They will be wearing a teal shirt, and that teal shirt signifies that they're a first-year referee. It signifies that they are learning, that they are going to make mistakes, and that we can help them have an enjoyable experience on the field along with players and parents and coaches. We also wanted to chat quickly about Project Ref, which is an initiative that we're very excited about with Kidsport and Hockey Calgary. Kidsport is sponsoring any Kidsport athlete to become a referee and pay for their entry-level course, as well as their uniform and any upgrading to go from a district to a regional level referee. It's a fantastic initiative that we're continuing to try to break down barriers and provide opportunities for people within the game of soccer. All of those new referees that I talked about, those brand new ones that you'll be seeing on the pitch, they're going to be receiving mentorship. They'll receive 4 touch points within their first season of refereeing, where they will have a designated mentor out at their games, helping them work through some of the problems, helping them to become better referees and more confident and more competent. And we're also trying to wrap some education around those mentors to make sure that they're continuing to improve the delivery of what they're giving our new referees, and they're continuing to improve as people as well. For any coaches or parents that are on the call, there's a ton of free education available right now through Sport Calgary. Keeping Girls in Sport is a fantastic module that you can look to complete. The title is pretty self-explanatory with that one. The Stay in the Game is kind of targeted to coaches and parents from 10 to 13 years old to encourage your children to stay within soccer and within sport. There's also Respect in Sport for parents that is free right now. This is something that the hockey system requires of all parents to be completed before your child steps foot on the ice. Something that soccer hasn't done yet, but I would encourage parents to give Respect in Sport a go. It's a fantastic little course. And then lots through the National Coaching Certification Program and the Locker and Coach.ca in terms of anti-racism in coaching, asthma management, mental health in sport, and a ton more. Jeff, I will get to your question. I promise. Some other coach training opportunities is something that we're really excited about in the Sport Injury Prevention Research Center at the University of Calgary. This is around SHRED concussions, and the SHRED study is going to be vital for us and vital for the game to keep moving forward. What you'll see is a ton of soccer players and athletes across Canada who have been involved. Some of you might be involved and some teams might be involved. If not, please reach out to Destiny and Carla. But we're hosting a coach training on May 5th in terms of neuromuscular training. So it's really a warm-up piece that is shown to decrease injury rates by up to 60%. You're probably looking at your screen and going, yeah, I've heard of FIFA 11 plus. Yeah. But what they've done through the University of Calgary Faculty of Kinesiology is they've added the concussion protocol to it. So they've actually expanded and built upon it so that it's a more robust piece that will prepare players to play as well. Again, I'm going to cruise through this because if I go into too much detail, I'll do a ton of disservice, but the coach workshops are coming. You'll get 2 NCCP credits if you attend, and then your players are to use it as a warm-up before practices and games as part of the study. They'll do some baseline testing. And really one of the key benefits is you as a club and parents and coaches, you get access to some of the top sport med professionals within Calgary so that if and when injuries occur, you go front of the line as part of these studies. If you want to reach out, please take a screenshot of that or visit the QR code that's on your screen, and they'll be more than happy to chat with you. Jeff, this is the moment you've been waiting for, and I'm sure everyone else. So let's get after it. What does Outdoor 2023 look like? So we want to make sure that we are aligning to a document that's starting to show a little bit of its age, but is really the bedrock and the foundation of sport in Canada. And that's long-term player development. So we're talking about a learning to train kind of phase. You can look this up online, and I believe it's available on our website as well if you can't read all of that information that quickly. But this is giving us guidelines that Canada Soccer has also expanded upon for their grassroots standards. So within our U10 and U11 age groups, this is what we're aligning to. It will look like this. It will look like a 7v7 format. And some of these coach qualifications that you're seeing on your screen are out of date now as it needs to be revised. And I'm awaiting on a formal document to do that. You'll see maximum game durations, maximum game time per player per day, minimum rest between them, maximum goal sizes, etc. All of the hard work has been done for me. I'm just the sucker who has to implement now, along with the rest of the staff at CMSA. You'll see things like pass in or dribble ins as restarts from sidelines, which is curious because there are no throw ins. You'll see things like no offsides, a retreat line if required, unlimited subs, etc. This is all rinsed and available both on our website and on Canada Soccer's website as well. The one thing that we're not aligned to within this is a festival format within the U10s and U11 age groups. And we'll talk to why we're not aligned to that in a moment. You've probably registered your kids into one of these two things, into either the developmental stream or the developmental plus stream. The differences here are around regionalized play or citywide play. There's a shorter schedule in terms of the developmental group and a longer schedule that goes into September for that developmental plus group. You'll see there a 1, 2, and 3 subgroup. And those are, I want to say, a tier, but more of a soft tier. These are our clubs grouping teams together that they feel will provide adequate challenge for each other. So we recognize that there is a culture in Calgary that is highly competitive, highly entrepreneurial, and highly innovative. So what we want to make sure is that we marry what we need to do in terms of producing soccer and the standards that we need to align to, while what's going to culturally fit within Calgary. We will be doing these subgroups straight off the top and going from the beginning. You'll see there a goal size as well of 6 feet by 12 feet, and that is club supplied. So I'd encourage you, if you turn up to a field that does not have a 6 foot by 12 foot goal, bring a measuring tape in your coaching bag or in your car. And if it doesn't meet those requirements, I'd encourage you to send an email, because at the end of the day, it's affecting the player experience, player development, and the player enjoyment anyway. Into what this actually looks like. Do I want to chat to that? Carl, I see your question in the chat. We will get there. Don't worry. Yeah, some of those modifications in terms of those subgroups and tiers, if you will, have really come from that consultation process with both the parents and the surveys and the membership, and also from our clubs. And that's led us to some of these modifications instead of mass groups where it's a completely randomized schedule. What these are defined as, well, we've kind of gone through that, and there is a handy video which is going to be published tomorrow on our YouTube in terms of what is developmental plus. Well, the kids probably love soccer. They're looking for full-time programs and more activity per week. What is the developmental stream? Well, they're probably looking for a variety of activities and a part-time program and less activity per week. I'm going to speed through a couple of these pieces just to make sure that we've got time. Of course, the strategies for lopsided games are always in play. So if you find like the game is just not going well, there's 3 strategies that you can use as coaches or parents and advocate for to implement those. Our field standards, in terms of all the fields that we've published and communicated to our clubs, is a size 30 by 50 for the 7v7 format and 2 25-minute halves of gameplay. I've already mentioned the goal size and a ball size of a size 4. Hopefully they're pumped up to a regulation weight as well. I will pause there before we dive into the modifications, and I'll answer a question in the chat. Wondering where the directive for dribble and kick-ins comes from. Reason being, if you leave the city, play a tournament in Okotoks, for example, they will enforce throw-ins. So I have to assume the directive isn't coming from Alberta Soccer. Wondering why we don't see everyone following the same rules. Comment on liking the dribbling and just wondering why everyone else isn't doing it. Really, this is a Canada Soccer directive. So the choice to not align to that at some point will have some sort of a consequence for those districts, for those clubs, for those organizations who don't choose to align to it. And while I can't speak for any other district or organization within the province, what I will say is that Alberta Soccer has got a very heavy workload with some other projects right now, and they haven't gotten to these sorts of alignment projects across the province. This is something that we are probably numerous years ahead of in terms of the rest of the game within not only the province, but then also certain regions in Canada as well. Alignment's a choice, and we've chosen to align. We've chosen to believe in the research. We've chosen to follow the directives of our governing bodies. So those who choose not to, I'm sure there will be some sort of consequence at that time. A comment on the losing side of many lopsided games last indoor season, none of those modifications were implemented. Do you know if they ever are, and how do we encourage that? It's up to the coaches and really to be implementing that and to be leaders in terms of those modifications, to put the players first and to give them a meaningful experience on the day. Does it look like a normally structured league where Team X plays Team Y? No, some of those strategies don't. But if we're going to make the most out of that hour or hour and a half that we have with those players, well, sometimes we need to get creative and get out of the box. So there is opportunity for coaches to be using those strategies, and really they need to come to an agreement between the two of them and put the players' needs first. I've heard lots of feedback around, well, the kids don't want to mix in. Well, potentially. I mean, at the end of the day, the kids will follow our lead as well. And if we're encouraging that and collaborative and friendly and approachable, there is a certain way that we can go about it to implement it. It's been implemented numerous times by a lot of different coaches and clubs. And the feedback that I've gotten is it resulted in a much better game. Say it was 5-0 at halftime, and this is a direct example from 2 clubs. They just went straight to mixing the players up, and it ended up being a 4-4 game and actually a fairly positive experience. The tough part is we're tribal people, and our families and our members are also fairly tribal. And the notion that, well, how are they going to work on team chemistry and how are they going to work on tactics doesn't come to life within mixing up random players. At the end of the day, how do we challenge players? How do we set them out? How do we encourage their learning? Because if we're just preparing teams, we're failing the individual player. There's a balance that needs to happen in terms of developing the team and developing the individual. And so there are certain instances where we can take a leadership role in developing the individual and setting forward tasks for them or certain challenges and problems, even within our games. Perfect. I will answer the next question in a moment. Just wanted to chat briefly about what some of these modifications are that are really directives from Canada Soccer, and we are at the end of the whip trying to implement. You've heard of things maybe like retreat lines, you've heard of dribble-ins, and you've heard of offside. So you don't need to worry about offside quite yet because there is none at the 7-a-side level, but I want to spend some time talking about what the retreat line is and why it's there. We know that the game continues to evolve and that we want to prepare players for the future game, not just the present game. What does the game that these 9 and 10-year-olds are going to play in a decade, what does that look like? We know, or can at least try to predict, that future styles of the game will revolve around maintaining possession of the ball and coordinated build-up from the goalkeeper. If you watch some of the leading top-end teams right now, the goalkeeper becomes a part of the back four. They actually become a center back, and it allows for a fullback or a center back to step into midfield or to go and progress higher up the field, pinning more of the opponent's defenders further back on the field. This is something that's going to continue. You see a lot of innovative coaches starting to use very good goalkeepers in this way. And we also know that players are going to have to make appropriate decisions based on numerous cues from the match while being able to maintain possession while under consistent pressure. The rates of speed that players are traveling now and the consistency of high speed action and repeated high speed action is only getting more and more and more and more. So these players are going to have to make better decisions under more consistent and higher pressure in the future. And I won't speak to this directly, but we feel like the mental, social, emotional piece is the most important corner and that it fuels the rest of them. And really some of the outcomes that we'll see from this retreat line will be a 4-corner developmental piece for the players when we institute it correctly and when coaches and when our referees deliver it appropriately. There's improved abilities across the board in terms of attacking and defending, which we can talk about all night long if we really like to. Some of the data around the Scottish FA retreat line study show that when the retreat line is used, the sequence of passes increases from 11% to 32%. And a sequence of passes they determined was 3 or more passes. You'll see when it's not used, we don't pass the ball, we don't possess the ball, we don't actually progress the play very well. And unless we turn the ball over within 3 passes, 89% of the time. You'll also see that they did it at a U11 level as well. And you'll see that it is a dramatic difference again in terms of when it's used, how we can use it to progress the ball. You'll also see here that the outcome, if the first pass is long, so long in terms of likely over half, I forget how they've actually determined how they measure long, but if we play long, 84% of the time, that's going to result in less than 3 passes and retaining possession. It's also going to result in very few sequences of passes. But if we play short in that possession-minded and build-up style, we will actually retain the ball, we'll create more scoring opportunities, and we'll keep more possession and play a more modern style of the game. We can talk about this a lot from New Zealand football and their retreat line study as well, but it essentially backs up the exact same findings that the Scottish FA had as well. In terms of playing through the thirds, they looked at it as well from regaining a defensive position and looking at it from a coordinated build-up piece and coordinated pressing to go in and win the ball back again. So we know that there's value within the retreat line. Coaches and players said that it was fairly easy and it had a positive impact on the game. So what is it? Well, we've created a resource here in the bottom of your screen that you can look up on our YouTube that explains exactly what the 7v7 retreat line is. And I'll go through it very, very quickly. The 7v7 retreat line works like this. Say the ball goes out for touch and it's a goal kick. Well, the blue team would then get a goal kick and the red team would retreat behind the halfway line, which is our designated retreat line for the U10s and U11s. Upon the ball exiting the penalty area or a teammate touching the ball, the red team would then be able to advance and look to regain possession and win it back. If there's a free kick to the defending team inside the penalty area, it's essentially treated the exact same way, whereas the attacking team will have, or the formerly attacking team will have to retreat behind the halfway line. And as the ball exits the penalty area or a teammate touches it, then the red team can then look to go and press and try and win the ball back. There's obviously other options for goal kicks as well, that judging by the cues that are presented on the field, goalkeepers can play direct as well. This would be a great situation here where you're 1v1, there's no offsides as well, to potentially play long. Then you can look to retain possession, hopefully, in that other half and look to play from there. There's no limitations on playing long or playing over the opponent. Here, the exact same type scenario looks a little bit different. You'll see here that there is still a long option, but that player is 1v3 or 1v4. And really the cues, us as coaches or us as parents, would not be to say, play it long, play it long. It would be to say, play the available player, find the free player, who's free, and look to set up that kind of a language and challenge, which then allows us to retain possession. This is what it looks like when it's not done appropriately. So all the red team is not behind the retreat line. The ball would be played and the referee would be expected to blow their whistle for a foul. They would then back the red team up behind the retreat line and they would retake that goal kick. I'm going to pause there for 2 seconds and grab some water. And then look to jump back in. I want to talk as well about what a dribble in is and what it is not, because it gets misinterpreted and a bit misconstrued at times. And I want to make this very clear for all of our parents, our coaches, referees, even our players that might be on the line. Dribble in would be when the ball goes out one of the sidelines, instead of a throw in, players would look to dribble the ball back into play. You'll see that that player's retained possession and has found some space to dribble the ball into. That is the correct interpretation of what a dribble in is. You'll see as well that the opponent, this blue player here, is backed off the necessary distance and is able to allow that red player to restart the game. An incorrect interpretation of what the dribble in is essentially passing the ball straight in. The referee would be expected to blow their whistle and to restart the game from that dribble in as well. We often see this dribble in piece modified where the player takes a first touch and then passes the ball in. That is a pass in at the end of the day. So we're going to be informing our referees that we want players to dribble the ball in, to find appropriate space or to go and challenge someone 1v1 if the situation presents itself, and to go and be brave with the ball and find opportunities to attack and restart the game quickly. Another version of an incorrect dribble in would be striking directly on goal and scoring. You would expect as well the referees to blow their whistle and restart that dribble in. Referees will make mistakes on this, I promise you. So if you are a coach, please do not be climbing all over them and losing your marbles. Please be patient. Please explain to them and please direct them to some of the educational resources that are available. You might have to deal with a referee who misinterprets this for a game or 2 games, but please reinforce some of these expectations and educational materials for them. Another incorrect interpretation of the dribble in is when the defender is too close to the player dribbling in. There's a required distance that defender needs to be backed off, so we won't start, or if we do want to start, the referee will blow their whistle and back that player off to the required distance. I'll pause there again to see if there are any questions around what the dribble in is, what the retreat line is, and how those things work in practice. There's a question in the chat that are there penalty kicks? There are penalty kicks. There's a penalty area, and that is outlined within the modified 7v7 rules of play that can be found on our website. There's also a question around how much space is the defending team expected to give to the player attempting to dribble in. It is either 5 meters or 6 meters. And I say it's either 5 meters or 6 meters because the amount of sleep that I'm running on with a 3-year-old and a 6-month-old while doing a kitchen reno is very, very limited right now. So I will make sure that I follow up and that I communicate with everyone if it's 5 meters or 6 meters, but expect it to be 5 or 6. So apologies that I don't know that exact number. I could probably flip through the modified rules, or if Kim or Rachel wants to right now, that would be very helpful to help answer that question for everyone and really make sure that there's clarity from myself. Apologies that I don't have that clarity for you. We'd like to also speak about the player fees and what this looks like, because at the end of the day, we want to work in a transparent manner with our membership. U10 Development and Developmental Plus, you'll see the player fee that comes to CMSA from the clubs per player. We've moved to a per player model rather than a per team model. And when you hear the amount of money that saved the clubs, your jaw will hit the floor. But those numbers will be produced shortly, and I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag quite yet. You'll also see out of this an ASA fee. So out of that CMSA fee, CMSA pays Alberta Soccer, which pays Canada Soccer, et cetera, all through the chain. I'm just going to hit next. You'll also see that when that ASA fee comes out of the CMSA fee, that's what's left for CMSA to be operating the programming. The price per match day for each of these groups, and what I've done is gone through the program handbook and the number of games that each of these groups are getting. It's either 11 or 14 is the numbers that I worked out of. And you'll see the price per match day per player. So for under $9 per match, we're able to essentially pay for our referees, our administration, our fields, etc., to try and keep the game as affordable as possible. We constantly get asked this question on the next slide: where does all the money go? And as you can see, the portion that comes into CMSA is essentially a fraction of what a typical registration fee is in Calgary. Where do those CMSA fees go, and what do those actually look like? Well, much of it is around the league costs. So it's around booking fields for games, paying the referees, and other league-related expenses that we incur. A portion of that as well goes to a facility fund contribution to help contribute towards future facility projects and upgrades, like the Calgary West Soccer Center renovation, which has now got a FIFA Pro quality turf, which is one of 2 fields in Canada that's received that rating, and we're very proud of that. And the new Shoaldice bubble facility, which has allowed us to expand our formats and to cater to a growing player population in the city of Calgary here. There's also a small portion that's a donation to Kidsport, because they fund Calgary players and Calgary soccer players to the tune, I think, of either $250,000 or $500,000. But it's a substantial investment into kids in Calgary that we want to make sure that we're giving back to Kidsport, and that programs like that have longevity and viability. There's also a fee that goes to Alberta Soccer and Canada Soccer that I mentioned, and then a small portion goes to pay for the CMSA staff that are with you tonight, as well as some others, to try to run Calgary Soccer as efficiently as possible and to continue to innovate. Really, it's to keep the lights on and some ink in the printer, and to keep us warm in the wintertime. That's about the extent of the administrative fees within that. I want to make sure that we chat too, and there's an awareness around ASA insurance. So if or when an injury happens, you need to be filling out the form that's located on Alberta Soccer's website. It's under the membership tab, and it's available 24/7 to anyone. This has to be filled out within 30 days of the injury. And what happens is, if you have personal insurance coverage, those funds will be used first, and then any additional expenses related to that injury, given the insurance policy. So please make sure you read through that and understand that. Alberta Soccer's insurance will kick in after that. Physio, rehab, or specialists, those expenses tend to add up very, very quickly, and they exhaust personal insurance essentially at the snap of a finger. So make sure that if there are injuries, even if you stub your toe, anything that happens, you fill out a form, and that you are covered in case anything does happen. On that, this is essentially our registration campaign for this outdoor season, but the key messages really pertain to the culture that we can build and the type of community that we can build. So I'll share this with you finally, and then I'll look to jump into the Q&A directly afterwards. And really, that's a testament to our community that we're trying to build. Yes, it's a registration piece, but you'll see words like passion and belonging, community and challenge all represented there. And really, that's at the end of the day what this game is about and what we're trying to give to the players, to the coaches, to the referees, and to everyone involved. I want to say thank you to everyone who's joined us tonight, because you could literally be anywhere in the world doing anything, and you've chosen to spend some time with us tonight. So we really appreciate your investment into the game. We appreciate your willingness to learn, to be present, and to also interact with us. So on behalf of CMSA, I want to say thank you to everyone on the call. I want to say thank you to those who continue to interact and to challenge and to give us feedback. We appreciate it, even though sometimes it might be a bit spicy. We appreciate the feedback, because we want to make this game the best possible game that we can for everyone involved. I'll leave our contact information at the screen here, and I'd like to close our presentations with that image on the left, that we can continue to pull the game in that similar direction and make serious progress in it. If we continue to pull it in the same direction, then we're not going to be working in opposition of each other. So again, collaborate within your club, collaborate amongst the clubs, and collaborate with us, because we can build a beautiful community and a beautiful game for those that are involved, and really be the shining example of what sport can be like in Calgary. I will jump into some of the questions. So if you have questions, please put them into the chat, and either Kim and Rachel will answer them via text, or we'll answer them live here. First question is, have we received feedback from parents and clubs around the naming of developmental versus recreation? Speaking to some parents, it was confusing, and some were registered in the wrong one due to the naming. It's a great question. What we did is we, again, went through a collaborative process amongst our clubs. I could probably scroll through the hundreds of text messages and phone calls that myself went through with our club leaders in terms of naming these levels, what the appropriate name would be. Because we find that recreational levels, we're still training 1, 2, sometimes even 3 times per week. And that recreational really isn't the correct term, or wasn't the correct term for those players. If I'm a recreational golfer, I go once a week, or once every 2 weeks, or I go once a month. That's a recreational level of golfing, recreational swimming, etc. These players that are showing up once, twice per week, that's not really recreational anymore. And what we tried to land on was terminology that really represented the commitment and the effort that they were putting into the game as well. We know that there is a recreational level to the game, and typically that's your house league kind of train and play model within the city. So we want to make sure that there is clarity going forward, and at some point the change has to happen. Now the change has happened, and it's not going to happen again. I can promise you that. But that clarity for people and for our clubs, and even for us to be out there and making sure that there is some sort of understanding around what each one of those levels and labels really mean. Question around, are you able to elaborate as to why we're not keeping scores and standings in competitive U10 Dev Plus? Seems odd that at this age in competitiveness, we're all still winners. I think that everyone's still a winner, whether you win or lose. You win or learn, and it's dependent upon how you approach the game and how you approach the environment to determine if you've won or lost. In terms of the word competitive that you've used, anytime that there's 2 teams, a ball and a referee, it seems that that's a competitive match regarding, not regarding the player's ability level. So in terms of competition and competitiveness, I see a lot of competitive games. I see competitive games at the park amongst cultural groups that join up and play pickup games. So in terms of that label, we've chosen developmental and developmental plus. Developmental plus, as we've spoken about earlier, is around citywide scheduling is around a longer season and a more commitment to the game, as they're probably more interested. Granted, they may have a higher ability, they may not. And the realities is the access to training environment and coaching resources often is determined based on ability, not based on the interest. So we know that players that are given time, players that are given investment, whether they are good, bad, or ugly right now, can potentially develop into a fantastic player or a lifelong participant in the game if they're given a quality environment. In terms of the scores and standings piece, long-term player development has advocated for a long, long time that no scores and standings be kept from U12 and below. We're simply aligning to where that is guiding us and to also what our governing bodies are asking for. We don't believe that the scores and standings in a public manner change the behaviors of the players, but rather they change the behaviors of the adults involved. And so it's really not that important who wins, loses, ties, who comes in first, who comes in last. The key piece here is to keep as many players involved for as long as possible. And we know that some games are going to be lopsided. There's going to be bad experiences. There's going to be great experiences. But hopefully that mix of experiences promotes a holistic development of the person and the player, where they can show class and humility when they are winning by a large margin, and they can show grit and determination when they are in a tough, close game. They don't need a score and a standing to show that, and really we find it to be completely irrelevant. Some of the research points us towards when people can mentally handle winning and losing and seeing that on a regular basis, and it points us to 15 and 16 years old. But I know what kind of pitchforks and torches will come out if we were to remove scores and standings all the way to 15 and 16 years old, because culturally, as we find within many interactions with many stakeholders, visibly seeing how we compare against each other is very important. At some level, it's important. Unfortunately, we don't believe at this level it's important. It says, how do I get my son's developmental team to get into one of the Alberta's tournaments? If the other parents are not interested, is there another way to get him into a few other outdoor tournaments? There's always guest players allowed into tournaments. I would say reach out to your club initially to see if they can go and play with some other teams that are in and around their age group, or potentially needing some players for tournaments, as that's a great way typically to join into some tournaments. Question, I've always been told that the previous rec terminology was for kids who wanted to do other sports, slightly less commitment, but dev has the same number of games, but crammed into a shorter season. This de facto results into an actually more intense schedule. Why do we do this? Jeff, fantastic question. And I can see how switched on you are, which is phenomenal. Our budget cycles are typically determined, they are determined a year in advance, usually 18 months in advance. So right now we're actually doing our budgets for next indoor and the next outdoor. That budget cycle typically is heavily influenced by the number of games, which influence the per player fee way down age groups and levels. Sorry, I think I cut out there for a second. All of the age groups and levels, that game number is already predetermined. So when we move to a shorter season and to other pieces, the budget is still impacted, and we typically have to follow a similar budget cycle. So what you will see going forward is a less number of games for those developmental ones, so that we can properly allocate approximately a game per week throughout their season, and whatever duration that season ends up being. But phenomenal question, Jeff. Really appreciate that question. Okay, I will stick around for another couple of minutes if there are any other questions. And if not, we'll look to shut down tonight. And again, thank you all for going the distance with us tonight. Fantastic interaction and fantastic questions. We truly appreciate those, and we appreciate your investment within the game. I love it. There's still a couple that have either fallen asleep or are hanging on right now. So what we'll look to do is we'll look to shut things down for tonight. You can always reach out to us through that info@calgaryminersoccer.com. And please, if you want to watch a recording of this, it'll be produced live on our YouTube in the coming days. So thanks very much, and looking forward to seeing everyone on the pitch.